The NBA is coming back to life at Disney World, and while we don't know yet whether or not these games will be animated or if there will be periodic interruptions for choreographed musical numbers, it does look like we're finally going to get to see some basketball. On Thursday, the NBA Board of Governors voted to move forward with a plan for a 22-team return to basketball that will happen at Disney World in Orlando, Florida. The plan includes 13 teams from the Western Conference and 9 from the Eastern Conference. And as for why there's a difference in the number of teams from each conference, other than the fact that the Western Conference is just better, well, that's because they're taking the top 8 seeds from each conference and then any team that was within 6 games of 8th place in their conference. And in the East, the Wizards were the only team that fit that criteria, while in the West, the Blazers, Pelicans, Kings, Suns, and Spurs were all still in a tight race for that last spot in the playoffs when the season was put on pause. And as for why these teams are even included, well, that's because they plan to play a few more games of an extended regular season over 16 days, which will allow some of those teams to have a chance to catch up and maybe make their way into the playoffs, as well as finalizing seeding for those top teams. Now, there are still plenty of details that need to be worked out, for example, scheduling and how many games each of these teams is going to have to play, as well as which Disney princess will be representing each team. Although there are some clear favorites right out of the gate, like Cinderella for the Suns, Snow White for the Nuggets, and Sally Carrera for the Pacers. And with there likely to be some issues around availability, especially given the circumstances, I wouldn't be surprised to see some exceptions and some compromises being made. Like, for example, Elsa might have to split her time between the Magic and the Wizards, and the Raptors might have to settle for Arlo. Now, aside from me getting a little bit carried away with that joke, this extended regular season does allow the NBA to not change the structure of their playoffs too much, like, for example, what the NHL is doing. But they are still going to make one change to it for this season. And that is to have a play-in series between the 8th and 9th seeded teams once those regular season games are over. But even here, they've been a little bit creative, not just going with a one-game winner-take-all or even a best-of-3 or best-of-5 series. Instead, what they've decided to do is to go with a setup where if the 8th seed is to win a game, they take it all, while the 9th seed has to win 2 consecutive games in order to win the series and move on into the playoffs. And if that for some reason seems a little bit confusing, you could also think of this as them joining a 5-game series partway through, where the 8th seed has a 2-1 series lead over the 9th seed. So even if the 9th seed does win the first game and the 8th seed wins the second game, the 8th seed would still win. There are really no other big changes. These playoffs are just like a normal NBA playoffs, with really the only other big change being the amount of time that will happen between series and between games, massively condensing this down from the amount of rest time that you would usually see in a playoff for the NBA. Past that, we did actually get to see some dates, with a July 9th to 11th start for training camps, and a July 31st to October 12th window for the season and playoffs to happen in. And on top of that, we did see that the NBA is fully committing to starting their 2020-2021 season later on in the year than they normally would, with it likely to not start until December 1st at the earliest. Now, it seems like I might be in the minority on this, but I think that I actually prefer the NHL's approach to just returning straight into a 24-team playoff to this kind of extended regular season and then going into a normal type of playoff, or at least almost normal anyway. Although I will admit that pretty much the only reason that I like the NHL's 24-team playoff version better is because I just like the idea of being able to watch more head-to-head elimination series than watching a seemingly forced extended regular season. That being said, I do think that logically the NBA's approach does seem to make a little bit more sense given the circumstances, with that extended regular season also helping to serve as a time for the players to knock a lot of the rust off that has accumulated over the last almost 5 months that they haven't been playing. On top of that, it does help to solve or at least dampen any potential complaints of the top seeds being treated unfairly or the lower seeds being potentially given a little bit of an advantage or extra opportunity. And while normally I would be all for the logically right decision, at this point it's been so long since I've gotten to watch either of these sports that I really just want to watch what I think is going to be more exciting, and that is just having more playoffs. And at least to be fair to the NHL, they did finally announce that their playoffs will include reseeding round to round and won't just be a hard fixed bracket. But regardless of all that, even with at least a month and a half to 2 months left before either of these leagues does actually come back, the light at the end of the tunnel does keep getting brighter day after day, which is definitely a good thing considering that the MLB seems to be getting closer and closer to missing out on the season altogether. But that's a separate issue. For now, I'm just really glad to see more news of a potential return to sports coming on the horizon, and I can't wait to cheer for whatever team is playing the Thunder. But that's all I have for now, so as always, if you have stuck with me to this point, thank you for watching. If you did like this video, hit like. If you really liked it, hit subscribe. And I would love to hear your thoughts on these NBA playoffs and maybe even the NHL ones down in the comment section below. Until next time, stay safe and treat each other well. Peace.